Welcome to Part the System, and today I'm with Assmaah Helal. How are you, Assmaah?
I'm good, thanks, David. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you. And excited to chat with you today. So a little bit about you. Assmaah has been leading and advocating and driving sport for social change in Australia and the Asia Pacific since 2009. Motivated by social justice and a passion for youth issues, Assmaah uses her expertise in program design, program management, youth work, and community engagement to create the conditions for sustainable change. Now, Assmaah has designed and facilitated a number of advocacy campaigns and sport for social change programs for young people across diverse communities in Australia and across the globe. Now, since 2010, through your role at Football United, Assmaah has been instrumental in the development of Creating Chances, which is a wonderful social enterprise that supports young people reach their full potential through sport and peer mentoring. Now, Assmaah is currently overseeing the Creating Chances operational growth and has recently completed the MBA specialising in social impact at the University of New South Wales. So, welcome, Assmaah, and I'm really excited to chat with you today.
I'm excited to be here, David. Thanks
Cool.
for having me.
You're welcome. So, we'll get straight into it. What does well-being mean to you?
Yeah, look, yes, and I appreciate that it's an individualized definition because I guess there are so many broad ways you could explain it. For me, I would say well-being is a journey, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean it's an end goal for me because I mean, we're all busy. And I feel like if we're ever in the mindset of, oh, I'll wait until I finish this, then I'll focus on my, self-care or my well-being, then probably not get there. So for me, I have to continually remind myself that it's a journey. I need to fit in well-being in my approach to all things. So it's really about what can I do regularly to ensure that my social, emotional, spiritual, physical needs are met, and in order for me to really be able to be present and achieve my full potential, really.
And on that journey to, I suppose, your well-being, what are some of the things that you've picked up that you do to kind of to make sure that you've got it where you want it to be?
Yeah, so I mean, in an ideal situation, I would factor in, aspects of the physical and the social. So I try and combine my social and physical well-being through cycling. So I do that with, I mean, we haven't done it recently with all the COVID, but regularly we do these weekend cycling groups with women in my community, some friends, and we just explore. We have coffee, get active, and it's just one of the best things. So I guess that's a very structured thing, but very rewarding. But I try and structure in some running, and I love my kettlebell, so I do some strength training through kettlebell swings and stuff like that. And then I guess this one is a non-negotiable, is my spiritual well-being. And as a Muslim, it's important for me to maintain my 5 daily prayers on time. And some say it's a form of meditation, but really it's an opportunity for me to reflect and show gratitude. And so that's really it. I guess in an emotional sense, really, it would be spending time with family and friends and really being conscious about making that a priority.
Yeah, fantastic. And you're talking about the running there and the cycling. What about some swimming? And maybe you can get into some triathlons.
So I have a dear friend. She's established this group called the Swim Sisters.
Yeah.
And every day
Yusra.
she's telling me,
Yusra?
get into it. Yeah, Yusra
Yeah.
Matwali.
Yeah.
I mean, swimming I used to be a swimming instructor way back, during my uni days. And, swimming is an important life skill that I'm trying to instill in my daughter.
Yeah.
As a recreational thing, I'm just, I find it takes a lot more time for me to G myself up to get that in. But, as a long-term goal, I can definitely set up a triathlon maybe.
Oh, it sounds like you do some.
One.
That's it. That's it. Sounds like you do some good stuff anyway to make sure you keep your well-being in check. So, yeah, I'm really curious to learn a little bit about your story, Asma, because I know the amazing work that you do in the community. But where's this passion come from for social justice and supporting young people?
Yeah, good question. For me, a few things. I guess my family would be, and my upbringing would be the foundation of, I guess, where this stems from, and then ultimately my values through my faith. But I'd say, through that came my passion in football. So football is what really brought my family together. We stay up all hours of the night to watch World Cup games, and it's what gave me friends. It's what helped me build my confidence as an extremely shy teenager, someone who lacked a lot of self-confidence. It was something that really changed my life, and playing football at the time. And I still play. I haven't officially retired, but I
You're
was
too
one of the
young
only.
to retire.
I've got 2 ACL reconstructions, knee reconstructions. So um,
Wow.
I'm still stubborn, and I'm still gonna play at some point. But yeah, so I was one of the only girls wearing hijab at the time. Where I was going through my teen years. And with the support of my father, that's what really helped me stick through it. There were doubts of, when I started wearing it, am I still able to play, and
Yeah.
so on. But what really sort of shook things up a bit was there was a time as well that the hijab was temporarily banned at the world stage through FIFA in football, mostly for women who wanted to represent at the global stage. And I had a network through Football United who then reached out to me and said, "Do you want to speak, about what this means for other Muslim girls around the world?" And I tried to look around my community too to see who else would want to speak instead of me. I was like, someone else surely. But the problem was there was no one. And so that really forced me into this position of advocacy or speaking up, and showing that this is an issue that's going to impact thousands of young people around the world and young Muslim girls. So that was one thing, and I guess going also while I was going through my university studies, as I got more engaged in my community, um, there seemed to be also a lack of girls in my community playing sport, but not because they didn't want to. It was really just wasn't seen as a priority in the upbringing. Their parents thought, no, just focus on the education, or maybe your brothers should just play the sport and not you. So I came across in my final year of university this men's Muslim indoor soccer tournament, and I was, curious. Was like, what about women? And they're like, we're open, but no one really wants to take the initiative. So I was like, all right, I put my hand up for it. And that was the beginning of sort of my work in this community space. I didn't know what it meant to organize an event other than organizing my, cousins' excursions that we did growing up as kids. But really that sort of launched me into this world of other women who don't have access or have been prevented from playing. So I really took it upon myself to organize a one-day women's futsal tournament and an 8-week futsal tournament. And it attracted hundreds of women. And I was like, I didn't realize this was an issue. I was very fortunate and blessed that I had a very supportive family, but I didn't realize that was the case. Or maybe it was a strange sense of, I was almost proud that I was the standout lone, raking against the stereotypes. But actually I was like, that mindset is not a good mindset, because I should be bringing along others with me. And so, yes, so I guess that's a long-winded way to express that. That sort of launched me into this passion about, well, I not just for Muslim women too. I guess that introduced me to Football United. That the whole work. I had a migrant resource center reach out to me. He said, "Can you do what you did, but for migrant and refugee girls and their mums? In all sports, basketball. We did swimming lessons with them, and then also football." And that then exposed me yet to another world of those who don't have so many opportunities and who have, we're going to talk about systemic issues and barriers, but really they are they have faced so many barriers, and sport should be one of the things, or physical activity should be one of the things that should be easily accessible. So it was very interesting in that experience, because I started out as a coach with Football United, and sometimes when not enough girls would turn up to the sessions, I would see if they wanted to join the boys, and some were even open to it, and they suggested it. So every time when they weren't getting involved and the boys were hugging the ball, the girls would obviously stand in the back or stand in as goalkeeper. So what I tried to do was encourage the boys to be more inclusive. That didn't happen. So I changed up the rules so that the goal scorers needed to change, and they needed to alternate in gender. So if a boy scored, then the next goal would be counted only if it's scored by a girl. So you started to see the attitudes shift, and almost instantly the energy of the girls and the boys had changed. So the boys were passing more, and the girls were getting more involved. And it was almost this sort of need for permission to participate. And for me, that was a light bulb moment where it was like, why? I mean, you have every right to participate. And that was for me, those experiences, along with my values around serving others and integrity and opening up doors and using my position, whatever position I have, was sort of what led me to what I'm doing now, I guess.
Thank you for sharing that. Just really wonderful to see how everything's progressed from that initial interest that you had, and looking at opportunities for yourself, and then paving the way for so many others, and inspiring. I'm sure a lot of people along the way. So, did you ever think that you would be such a role model at the beginning? It's just really. It's really interesting to see where you've landed now and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, you don't sort of set out to be. I mean, no one does. And if I'm considered a role model, that's great. And I guess that's, if I'm honest, not just in that sense, but as a Muslim woman who's visibly Muslim, there's this added layer of, I need to perform, or not perform, but I need to strive to work hard, and with the sort of pursuit of excellence, so that the work that I do, it has a purpose that benefits others. So that's really, I guess, what drives me. And if it means that others look up to that, that's great. I'm human. I mean, we all make mistakes, and you're all busy. But no, I mean, I think it's you sort of strive towards your values, and follow, or parents or people who are influencers of children will also respect where you're coming from and respect the sort of values that you uphold, and then will therefore allow their children to take part.
Yeah. Isn't sport just such a great thing where we can talk about getting people involved and belonging and sense of purpose? It's so I'm sure you've talked about it with such fluidity, but I'm sure there's been some challenges along the way with setting some of these programs up. But I think, and maybe we can talk about some of those, but in terms of where you're at now, it seems like all these paths have kind of led to the work that you do and creating chances. So tell us a little bit more about the organization in the system.
Yeah, look, so really Creating Chances evolved out of two entities, so Football United and the Rugby Youth Foundation, both using their respective sport to address some of the barriers to participation, but also about instilling, leadership and life skills amongst young people in some of the most marginalized communities in Sydney. And so often I would notice in our paperwork and our documentation saying that, we're achieving all these skills like teamwork and collaboration, but often it's assumed that that's achieved by setting up these cones and young people will turn up. And I know there's research obviously that shows that there are impacts, or there's a link between physical health and social emotional well-being as well. But how do we intentionally do it such that the young people can connect the dots between what they're experiencing on the field and in their world and school and life and the community? So we developed a curriculum really that focused on social and emotional learning through experiences on the sports field, not just football, so that a facilitator can really create scenarios or situations where young people are forced to think, forced to solve problems, and consider how those situations that occur in a field, like conflict, can then be related back to how they deal with conflict in their families or their relationships. So in saying that, I guess really, well-being is impacted by your environment or by the attitudes of so many people, by teachers and by parents and by people who deliver the programs in our organization. So we work closely with schools, particularly in the education system, and support services to provide young people opportunities so that they could get out of their comfort zone, essentially, so they can try new things. And we sort of work with them to explore the tools to solve problems in their lives. So it's essentially a positive youth development approach, where we create experiences that are safe for them to make mistakes, for them to do things they may never thought that they could in a safe environment. So we have a 5-stage pathway from 8 to 18 years old. Each stage really focuses on key outcomes, where it involves, transition from primary school to high school, or overcoming some of the challenges on the playground, through to social emotional learning, social responsibility, understanding your community, coaching others, so really developing leadership skills around that, and then looking at your future pathways. What are your options beyond school? And some of these young people we work with don't even move or don't explore 10Ks outside of their homes, for so many reasons. So it's really about creating these environments where young people can express themselves, which really in turn allows them to understand their needs and act on them, and be able to act on them, with the right sort of coping mechanisms, with the right tools, and with the right support, essentially.
Yeah, and how many schools are you in?
So this year or this term, we have about 52 programs, but there's several programs in one school. So I would say there's about maybe 30 to 40 this term. But over the long term, there's a significant number across New South Wales that we've engaged with. And I guess maybe this comes later in our discussion, but some of the barriers around being able to sustain these programs and the sort of sustainable funding mechanisms to continually provide support for young people is a big challenge. But there's a pretty big footprint across the state.
That's some pretty big scale right there, isn't it, in terms of coordination and logistics, and it's very broad there.
Yeah, we're at an interesting stage of growth. It's a little bit. I mean, it's very challenging. I would say, in the sense that we're having to start looking at bigger systems that we need to implement. I mean, when I say systems, I mean infrastructure and technology that's going to support the finances, our HR, and things like that, where before we were using simplified systems, Excel spreadsheets, all of that. So so it's at an interesting stage where people are feeling quite overwhelmed, and there's lots of responsibilities layered upon people, which it's now we just need to sort of spread things out. It's an interesting stage, but lots of learning.
And that's the journey of growing an organization, isn't it? I think in terms of the efficiency and effectiveness, and absolutely. It's not just all about the delivery of the programs and the good stuff when you're running an enterprise. And you talked a bit about some of the barriers there and around the funding models. So can we just explore that a little bit in terms of some of the challenges that you kind of you've got on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, so so we work. So in terms of our funding model, we've had to be a bit creative in that we could no longer, over maybe a decade ago, no longer rely on solely government grants or philanthropic donations. That we had to create a model where it was almost business to business model, where the school or the department really purchased our packages or provided or we provided our services to the schools, who then we delivered it to young people. So we've had to really just be innovative in terms of how we deliver our programs, how we chop and change certain things to suit the needs of the school, to align with their strategy and their curriculum, without going away from our evidence-based, programs, but being creative enough to still have that flexibility and adaptability. So I guess it's difficult because in the bigger system of things, when we look at mental health support services or any support services for young people, the key to that is accessibility and knowing where to go and feeling safe to express themselves, and creating this enabling environment that's culturally appropriate. So where organizations or programs operate effectively and have evidence to back them up and then aren't refunded for whatever reason, that can be quite dangerous for not being able to provide consistent and regular support for young people, because we know the impact if they can't access these support services. That's going to have a decline on their physical and mental health, and then may impact the way that they perform, but also then impacts their engagement in school as well. So it all is all connected.
And the evidence is clear, isn't it, Assmaah, in terms of exercise and educational levels attainment. There's some really good research out there. The healthier people are and their well-being, then the better they're going to be in terms of their achievements. But I suppose from a social enterprise perspective, it's your product, you're trading as a service, and you're delivering these educational programs, and to then bring in some money, because you can do good and you can also make money at the same time. So there's nothing wrong with that. So it's not just, I suppose, about getting grants to deliver your services, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, it all comes down to paying staff in the end, paying qualified people to do the work. When you're working with children and young people, vulnerable groups, I mean, obviously there are talented and qualified volunteers, but you're at the risk of them just falling off the radar, one day, or not being able to commit. So, and a big part of what we're working towards and are embedding is youth employment within our program. So young people who have completed the 5-stage pathway, all elements of it, are welcome to apply and work with us. We have a more structured program now with our school-based apprenticeship and traineeship program. So all of that links, where we're achieving impact and sort of economic independence for young people at the same time. So it's definitely need funding and resources to make that happen.
I love the work that you do, creating chances. I think it's so powerful. And I'm curious, with you finishing the social impact masters at UNSW, are you using any of that learning in terms of how you measure impact, creating chances?
Yes. So one of the first units I did in the degree was demonstrating social impact. So it was very eye-opening. I guess the key thing that I took away from that, and I guess from a CC point of view, we're very fortunate to have a strong relationship with the University of New South Wales, although a very small team at UNSW, one person or 1.5. So, but what that allowed me to do was have empathy for our team who created the surveys, and I've tried to instill processes within our organization to collect the data and evaluate it, where understood the benefits, understood the necessity of it, and then also the sort of, and I guess this ties into program design, but the importance of having a theory of change and a logic model to really justify why you're doing it, and that it's not something that really is static, that it needs to be evolving, ongoing, depending on what's happening in your sort of environment that you're working in. Connecting the theory, I guess, to reality is also an interesting challenge, because you've got all these ideas and you want to bring the team on with you, and it's no one else is as excited as you. Not that no one else is as excited,
Of course,
but
yeah.
you know, everyone loves M&E, monitoring and evaluation. But for us, it's really the importance of simplifying it as much as possible, and maximizing the information you're collecting. And I know maybe this goes to a bigger discussion around data collection. You know, you really should just be choosing to collect the information you really need, as opposed to collecting all the data and then figuring it out. So it's about being strategic in that sense.
And with that theory of change, what's the problem that you are trying to solve? Is it around supporting young people into employment and building confidence, etc.?
Yeah, so our ultimate long-term impact is social cohesion, essentially. It's how well young people feel connected and feel that they belong in society. Working back from that, it's the sort of medium to long-term outcomes in terms of having regular employment or having access to physical activity, feeling that they're part of society. And then the short-term outcomes are really immediately from our programs around improved resilience, improved pro-social behavior, so their willingness to volunteer or contribute to initiatives at their school. So really looking at what your long-term impact is, what you want to achieve, and then sort of working back from there.
Yeah, awesome. And that social cohesion is so important coming out of COVID more than ever. So
and more than ever, absolutely, for young people and the broader community. And I guess as well, it's and this is something that Football United and the Rugby Youth Foundation have always worked towards achieving, is reducing or tackling discrimination, and getting to know people from other backgrounds. We work with young people from refugee backgrounds, Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander backgrounds, and Pacifica communities, and you name it. Like there are so many young people represented across a number of ethnic groups, and we try to create an environment where they share their identity, where they're proud of their identity, where they share their culture. And that for us is where I think true sense of belonging happens, where we're talking about inclusion in the sense of you can be yourself, you can be wherever you've come from, you can be your faith, you can be your culture, and still be connected with others, and people will respect it. So we've got a program called Pacific Waves, led by Joe Tao, incredible Maori Samoan man leader. It just inspires honestly some young people who are at the risk of some seriously bad outcomes in their life, where they come from environments that they have the postcode wars. And so really just trying to break that down for them, to say there's a bigger world out there. You can, and there's this intergenerational conflict that they may not be aware of, but where they have this understanding of where their parents are from, or somewhat of an understanding where their parents have come from, and they're living in Australia, but they're not feeling that well connected to society. So there's internal battle. It's like, where do I truly belong? So when you educate them about where they come from or where their parents come from, there's this sense of pride that builds. And doing that through culture, like through arts, through sport, through music, all of that stuff is really, really powerful. So yeah, that's that's another sort of avenue or platform we try and work towards promoting.
Beautiful. Yeah, creating those conditions, and the culture there is coming through really strong. And I was going to actually ask you, how could we get more people active from minority populations? But you've kind of answered that there with. But is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Definitely. And I think the way we tackle problems is from a strength-based point of view. I mean, we don't get it right all the time, obviously, but I feel often things are looked at from a lens of a deficit model where, don't smoke, don't do drugs, that sort of thing, get active, get outside, go run, as opposed to looking at it from a strength-based or open-ended, bottom-up, approach where the programs or physical activity initiatives are tailored to actual life situations of young people from minority backgrounds, that we factor in the individual differences, that we design according to what their values are. I know with some of the young women that we've worked with from Afghan backgrounds or Muslim backgrounds, that we know that the family values education, where they need to know that this isn't going to compromise the young woman's access to, getting a university degree, or that it's not going to conflict with her studies. So it's looking at how do we design it so it's a way that actually reassures the family that, one, we can educate them on the importance of sport and education, that we can provide them with role models, that coaches who are either from their community or just a really positive person who maybe completed university, maybe hasn't, but just have a positive influence on their daughters or their children. And so that's an important factor, I think, coming to the community with where they're at. And education, and I think it's moving away or moving beyond just translating a flyer, for example, in the language, but really reaching out to them and putting on some food, or organizing it at a time where they're actually going to come. And I think that's a bit of a barrier when it comes to organized sports clubs, where and I understand the challenges there. It's run and led by volunteers, and there's certain limitations around that. But I think being open to the idea of going outside of what already exists, that we can create new spaces where people do feel safe, where their identity isn't challenged, or where they're safe to talk their language, and also then where there's opportunities to build the young person's sense of self-worth and self-awareness. So I mean, that all sounds very lovely, and in practice is very difficult and time consuming, and like we've not mastered it at all. And every time we receive a grant or a program or funding to design things like this, we have to come at it from a perspective of, don't assume we know it all either. Just because we've been in this space for so long, we need to still tackle it with a beginner's mindset. And I think that lines up with this whole design thinking concept. But just don't make assumptions that this is a new wave of immigrants coming, or new experiences, new traumatic experiences that they faced. So let's take the time to understand.
Yeah, and we've all got our biases, haven't we? The way we see the world. So, and that really comes into the systems thinking stuff, Assmaah, getting the different perspectives, and you talk about it there in the terms of the work that you do. But going back to your earlier story around the hijab and the challenges that you had in the beginning, in playing in football, seems like we've come a long way, but there's still a lot of work to do. Yeah, there is
still so much work to do. But it becomes, I don't know about you, David, but you get obsessed. I don't know if it's healthy, but not obsessed, maybe that's a strong word, but you get engrossed in the problem or the solution. And you just make it a personal mission to try and solve in the right way.
I agree. Is it passion? Is it obsession? When people think you're passionate, they think it's great, you really like it. But if it's a bit obsessed, you're a little bit over the top, just calm down a little bit. But I definitely lean towards that obsession. It comes back to purpose, and you've definitely got that, and that's part of well-being, isn't it? As we've talked about.
Absolutely.
So yeah, keep it up. And in terms of chronic disease, 1 in 2 Australians have got a chronic disease, and unfortunately, it's getting worse. We've talked a lot about sport, but if we could improve the well-being of Australians, and you could nudge the system in one way, what would that be?
I'm curious to know how you define nudging the system. Do you mind expanding on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's quite a paradoxical question, because the system is adaptive, and it's always moving, and it's always changing. But the intention of the question is, if there was one thing that we could do to try and improve the well-being of Australians, and if we're trying to reduce a chronic disease, could be diabetes or obesity or mental health or heart disease, what could we look at as a lever to try and kind of alter the system?
I think maybe the theme across most of what I've been talking about fits into this around equity and access to services. Are we ensuring that everyone is included, even though that we're not just saying they're included in the one space, but that there are options for them to choose from, so that it is equitable and accessible. That's my nudge.
I love that. That is a brilliant answer. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely, and that links into the social justice. I think that that comes through from your kind of journey and the work that you do. So yeah, brilliant. And if we looked at you as a person in terms of what you do, so personally, where do you see yourself in the system, and how do you contribute and influence it?
Yeah, I guess as coming out of the MBA, you sort of you create your leadership development plan, and you look at stepping away from the doing and then helping others do. But I guess I'm in between the doing. So I very much am about the designing and the collaboration, and linking the dots, and helping to address or raise awareness about some of the root causes of some of these issues, and therefore speaking up, when I get the chance. And if that's through my platforms, on LinkedIn or sharing on Twitter or whatever it is. But then also genuinely, my goal is to help develop others grow, so that they can also, create the conditions for change. I mean, that sounds, a tagline, but that's not what it's meant to be. But, I studied the MBA as well for so many reasons, but one of them is because of that, so that I want to understand the system. I want to be able to talk the language of policy and design makers, or decision makers, sorry, and then help others who may not maybe ever complete an MBA or have access to this sort of education, which I hope they do. MBA is not the solution to things. I'm not saying that, but just having that knowledge, or even experience to navigate the system. Like a case in point was with the Pacific Waves program. So Joe Tao, incredible community leader, we sort of worked with him to create the program logic model, and then sell that initiative to the schools, because he had this great idea in mind. But then how do you then translate that into something that can be funded or resourced? So I feel like, I feel like my strengths are in that space, in my current moment in time, and helping others, do the stuff that needs to be done that I can't do, but then I also want to do at the same time. I don't even know if that makes sense, but yeah, that's I think where I see myself personally, and in this world of in the health system, in the sports system, I feel like leadership, the people who are in leadership positions, well experienced. But I know that there can be more done in diversifying leadership, in these spaces. So I'd like to be in those positions just to provide another insight, provide another perspective on things. So yeah, that's it.
Amazing. And if you don't mind, could you just share the program that you've just designed, which you had women in leadership from, I think, all over
Yes.
Australia and afar, in terms of that project, because
that's a definite, I guess, personal passion one, which I was fortunate to be able to link into the work we're doing with Football United and Creating Chances. But essentially, we received some funding from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, looking really at the power of sport as a tool for diplomacy. But I guess more importantly is, how do we raise awareness around the incredible work other women are doing around the world from countries that maybe people have this assumption that are either backward or non-progressive, or women are oppressed. So the Middle East, we had women from Jordan, from Palestine, from Saudi Arabia, from the UAE, all incredible young women, emerging leaders, using sport to tackle some of society's most challenging problems. Where in Palestine, every day is a war for them. They're going through what you would call an apartheid, essentially. So they use sport as a way to promote education outcomes, to build their resilience, and so on and so on. So incredible work that they're doing. And then also incredible young Australian women from across the country who are also working with marginalized and vulnerable groups using a range of sports. So we basically brought them together virtually through a 6-week leadership program, and each week consisted of different topics and tools that they could use and apply in their own context. But and you were an amazing contribution to that one, David, so thank you. But it was also a chance for them to network and really exchange stories around what's working, what's not working, and maybe even come out of that wanting to collaborate on projects together. So although different contexts, but really raised a lot of awareness around what's going on around the world. Because for me as well, I had some really great opportunities as I entered this space of sport for social change to travel and hear from others about what they're doing in this space. And that, for me, really, I guess, solidified the passion and why I do it. And I keep thinking maybe I divert and go somewhere else and do other things, but it's hard. I keep coming back. So so that program was really a great one. We've done it face to face on previous occasions, but thanks to COVID, you have to innovate and adapt and be agile. So it was a fantastic program.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I just thought that was really important to talk about, and them wonderful change makers all around the world doing their thing, and same concepts, using sport and tackling a lot of these social issues and things that are specific to their countries. So amazing. And that brings us to the end.
So fantastic.
It's been really good to chat with you. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I just think, the concept of systems thinking or systems design is a really powerful thing. Where you sort of, once you take a step back from what you do on a day-to-day and really understanding the broader context of things and who's doing what and the link between the causes and effects of problems. And I think really to make it successful is the importance of collaboration and with multiple stakeholders in whatever way. And if it's reaching out for support or endorsements or come speak at our event sort of thing, I think all of that stuff is really powerful and needs to continue to be done. And the work that you're doing, David, as well is amazing. So thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. We've been trying to make this happen for a while, haven't we? Unfortunately couldn't do it, but we did it in the end. So
yay,
we did. Just hope it's recorded. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Asma, for showing such vulnerability and telling us all about your story. I think you're amazing, you know that, and good luck for everything in the rest of the year with Creating Chances and Football United, and hopefully catch up with you in person soon.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much, David, for having me.
No problem. See you soon.
Bye.